So in the remaining time, I think rather than talking about substitution, because we don't have that many minutes left, I want to go back to really, I guess, let's see, which equation is it now? I think maybe it's hidden. Or no, it's right here. So this equation. Remember all the way from the beginning of the class, we talked about what prices actually measure. So these are industry outputs, but they're also things that individuals are going to be buying. Households like you and me, we'll also buy some kind of desk chair. We'll also buy groceries from the grocery store. And because from the utility maximization problem, we know that these prices are reasonable measures of value. So they're going to be proportional to the marginal utility for those things for everyone who's buying them. One thing I think is quite interesting about this equation is, we said, okay, initially value came from a whole lot of things. There were a whole lot of inputs, a whole lot of prices on the right-hand side. Now all of a sudden everything boils down to just a couple of things. And suppose we took out input 2, we just had input 1, and we said input 1 we're going to think about as labor. Now in principle I've said all value in the economy comes from labor. What does that sound like to people? This was kind of an interesting thing that I realized when I was working on this. What is Marx's theory of value?
So it should be hours work. Hours, man hours, right?
Yeah, so Marx's theory of value is that, I guess we'll be charitable, we'll say the value of a good is proportional to the number of hours of labor that went into it. What's a key difference though here? We don't have the second input. What's a key difference here relative to that theory, even just focusing on the one input? Does anyone see it? Even though in this case, everything is about labor.
So it's not the labor that enters directly, the one that you rent, but the one that you rent also through your suppliers? Or?
That's not quite it. There's also labor. You are right that in the same way we've talked about orders of exposure to oil, let's say, you also are exposed to the labor that your suppliers are using and things like that. But that's not quite what we're getting at here. So this is a market wage. So I kind of pulled a bait and switch on you. It's not all about labor, it's all about the value of the labor. And that labor is valued at a market price. So even just looking at labor, if I put in a bunch more labor that's useless, the market should not value that labor. And so that's not going into the value that we measure in the economy. Yes?
So maybe I'm going too far out of the class, but so there's like Staffa, and I think like people that try to follow what he says, and then in his context, I think he calls about like amended labor, and I think he's talking about like the value of labor. So then I think that's where things converge a little bit more.
I think that's right. That's definitely right to some extent, although there is another problem, which is there are core inputs like the gift of the land, let's say, oil that's in the ground, things like that, that are distinct sources of value. And that's made particularly clear, I think, in this model. So that's something that's also missed in that framework. I guess as a question, though, to be fair to you, what if we had capital here? Is that also distinct? So one thing that I'll point you guys to, and I'll leave you with this, is just as we did this whole framework today for intermediate inputs, there's also, you can find on the BEA's website, input-output tables for the production of investment goods. You can do exactly the same analysis, and what that analysis makes investment goods and capital look like is really the lagged use of the same common factors and labor. Capital is old labor and old common factors. And so in some ways that doesn't really change anything. But the original distinctions that I mentioned are still there and are very important. So I think that concludes what I wanted to talk about today. Thank you all for your questions and interest.